My father's hometown is about a 2-hour drive from our home. My grandparents were farmers, and I liked the atmosphere of the fields. When I started riding a motorcycle in high school, I used to visit my grandparents' place alone during summer and winter breaks. Grandpa and Grandma were happy to see me and welcomed me warmly. But I haven't gone there for over 10 years. It's not that I never wanted to go, I was unable to. Today, I want to talk about what happened that day. It was the spring break of my 3rd year of high school, and the weather was good, so I went to Grandpa's house on my bike. It was still cold, but the veranda was warm and comfortable, and I relaxed there for a while. Then, I heard a strange noise. It didn't sound mechanical, it felt like a human voice. Wondering what it was, I found a hat on top of the fence visible from the garden. It wasn't placed on the fence. The hat remained where it was and moved sideways until it reached the gap in the fence, revealing a woman wearing a white dress. She must have been wearing the hat. But the fence was about 7 feet high, so how tall was the woman to stick her head out from there? As I was surprised, the woman moved again and disappeared from my sight. The hat disappeared too, and the sound was gone as well. Afterwards, while drinking tea in the living room, I told my grandpa and grandma what had happened earlier. I saw a big woman earlier. Was it a man cross-dressing? She was taller than the fence. She had a hat on and was making a strange popopo noise. As soon as I said that, the two of them stopped moving. They stopped completely. After that, Grandpa asked me with an angry look on his face.
When did you see her? How much taller was she compared to the fence?
Despite feeling overwhelmed by Grandpa's intensity, I answered his questions. Then he suddenly fell silent and made a phone call in the hallway. Since the door was closed, I couldn't tell what he was talking about. Grandma looked a little shaky. Grandpa hung up the phone and returned to the living room. He said,
"You'll have to stay here tonight." "No, I can't let you go back tonight."
I desperately tried to think if I had done something terribly wrong, but I couldn't think of anything. After all, that woman had appeared on her own. Grandpa said I'm going to pick up Kay, and he went out somewhere in his pickup truck. I asked my grandmother in horror. She said in a trembling voice,
"You've been favored by HATISYAKU Sama. Grandpa will take care of it. Don't worry about anything."
She then slowly told me more about it. In this area, there is a troublesome deity called HATISYAKU Sama. She takes the form of a large woman, and as her name suggests, her height is about 8 shaku. It is about 79 feet. Her laugh sounds like bo 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 bo, and her appearance varies from person to person, sometimes appearing as a young woman in morning clothes or an elderly woman in a kimono, or even an auntie. She is abnormally tall and wears something on her head, but her creepy laugh is common among sightings. There are rumors that she used to attach to travelers in the past, but it is not certain. She is sealed by Jizo around this district and does not go elsewhere. Anyone who is fascinated by the HATISYAKU Sama is cursed to death within a few days. The last damage caused by her was about 15 years ago. It's a story I heard later, but the way to prevent the HATISYAKU Sama from moving was to install Jizo at the boundary of the 4 directions, where she could move. There seems to have been some kind of agreement with the surrounding villages, such as prioritizing water rights. Since the damage caused by HATISYAKU Sama is only once every few years, the former villagers accepted HATISYAKU Sama as the price of a lucrative pact. Even if I heard all this, I couldn't believe it at all. Of course. At that time, Grandpa returned with an old woman.
"It's gotten really serious. Here, take this."
An old woman named Kay said as she gave me a bill. Then, Miss Kay and Grandpa went upstairs and did something. Grandma stayed by my side, even when I went to the bathroom, and didn't let me close the door completely. For the first time since coming here, I started to feel a little nervous. After a while, I was led to a room on the 2nd floor. All the windows were covered with newspaper and bills were pasted on top of them. Salt was placed in every corner of the room. There was a makeshift altar made of wood with a small Buddha statue on top. They had brought 2 chamber pots. That's my toilet.
The sun will set soon. Listen carefully, you cannot leave from here until tomorrow morning. Neither I nor the grandma will call you or speak to you. Do not leave from here until 7 a.m. tomorrow. Go out of the room by yourself at 7 o'clock. I will call your parents.
Grandpa said with a serious expression. I could only nod silently.
Make sure you follow what I have said. Keep the bill with you at all times. If something happens, pray in front of the Buddha statue.
Miss K told me. I was told that I could watch TV, but even watching it didn't distract me from my fear. I didn't feel like eating the snacks Grandma gave me when I was locked up in the room, and I just trembled under the covers. Even in that state, I somehow fell asleep. When I woke up again, a late-night program was playing on the TV. Looking at the clock, it was 1 in the morning. As I was thinking how unpleasant it was to wake up at this time, I heard a sound of someone lightly tapping on the window glass. I couldn't tell if it was the wind or someone knocking, so I desperately tried to convince myself that it was just the wind. But I was still scared, so I turned up the volume on the TV and forced myself to keep watching it. That's when I heard Grandpa's voice.
Hey, are you okay? If you're scared, you don't have to force yourself.
I instinctively approached the door, but then I remembered his words. The voice called again.
What's wrong? You can come over here.
It sounded very much like Grandpa's voice, but I had a feeling it wasn't really him. I got goosebumps all over my body. When I looked at the salt, the top part was black and discolored. I quickly sat in front of the Buddha statue and clutched the amulet tightly, praying for help. At that moment, that voice was heard, and the window glass started rattling again. Although I knew that HATISYAKU Sama wasn't that tall, the sight of her reaching up from below to tap on the window glass flashed into my mind. All I could do was pray in front of the Buddha statue. Although it felt like an incredibly long night, morning still came. The morning news program was already broadcasting without me realizing it. The time displayed in the corner of the screen was definitely 7:13 a.m. The sound of tapping on the glass and that voice had stopped without my noticing. It seemed that I had passed out from fear. The salt was even more discolored, almost entirely black. When I opened the door hesitantly, my worried-looking Grandma and Miss K were there. Grandma shed tears of relief and said, "You're going to be okay." My father was also in the living room. Grandpa appeared outside and told us to hurry and get in the car. When we went outside, there was a minivan parked in the yard. Some men were also in the yard. The minivan was a 9-seater, and I was seated in the middle, with Miss K sitting in the passenger seat. The men in the yard all got in too.
It's a really bad situation. You might be curious, but close your eyes and look down from now on. We can't see anything, but you can. Don't open your eyes until I say so,
said the man in his 50s sitting on my right. Then, Grandpa's pickup truck led the way, followed by our car and my father's sedan. The cars moved at a very slow speed, perhaps not even 20 kilometers per hour. Soon, Miss K said, "It's a critical time for us," and she started chanting something like a Buddhist sutra. That voice was heard again. I clutched the amulet that Miss K had given me. I closed my eyes and looked down as instructed, but for some reason, I opened them slightly and looked outside. I saw a white dress moving at the same speed as the car. The face was higher than the windows and couldn't be seen. However, she began to make a gesture of lowering her head, perhaps to look into the car. Unconsciously, I let out a "Oh!" "Don't look," the uncle next to her shouts. I tightly closed my eyes and squeezed the amulet even harder, while Miss K's chanting gained momentum. Eventually, I thought the voice and sounds had stopped when Miss K said, "The danger has passed." The men who had been silent up until then let out relieved voices. After a while, the car stopped in a wide area on the road and I was transferred to my father's car. My father and Grandpa thanked the other men. Miss K approached me and said,
Show me the amulet.
When I looked at the amulet, it had turned black. Miss K gave me a new amulet and said,
I think it is all right now, but keep this with you for a while.
After that, my father and I returned home together. It seemed like her knew about HATISYAKU Sama. He told me a story about when he was a child and one of his friends was bewitched by HATISYAKU Sama and died. He also mentioned that some people had left the area due to being bewitched. The men who had driven me in the minivan were all distant relatives of mine. They had done such a thing to deceive HATISYAKU Sama's attention. However, it was difficult for 7 men to gather immediately, and it seemed safer during the daytime than at night, so I was locked in my room for the night. They stressed to me not to go there anymore. After returning home, I talked to Grandpa on the phone. When I asked if he had called out to me that night, he insisted that he had not. When I thought about it again, I felt shivers down my spine. HATISYAKU Sama often targets children. When a child or a young person is in a state of extreme anxiety, if a family member's voice seduced them, they may unwittingly let their guard down. 10 years later, when I had nearly forgotten about that day, an unfunny epilogue occurred. I received a call from the grandma.
The Jizo statue that has been sealing the HATISYAKU Sama has been broken by someone. Moreover, it's the Jizo statue on the way to your house.
Even though I told myself it was probably okay now, I still felt pretty worried. What if that voice started again?